If you looked at Scott and Taylor Reekins in 2017, they appeared to be living the ultimate Southern California dream. They rented a house in the pristine beach town of Coronado, rode cruisers along the boardwalk, and spent weekends enjoying nice restaurants and ocean views. Behind that shiny exterior, the reality was a constant grind. Together, they brought home $142,000 a year after taxes, but to afford their zip code, they were working long, high-stress hours, commuting in relentless gridlock, and paying $2,500 every single month for a nanny to watch their infant daughter while they stayed chained to their desks. They managed to convince themselves they were being highly responsible adults. After all, they maxed out their retirement accounts and carefully avoided putting anything on credit cards. But if you looked closely at the math, their yearly burn rate was sitting at a staggering $124,000. They were effectively living paycheck to paycheck, completely dependent on the next deposit to keep the machine running. A high income does not automatically equal wealth. When nearly every dollar earned is immediately deployed to service a massive overhead, the salary becomes a tether. The higher the monthly minimums climb, the harder it is to ever walk away from the treadmill. The Reekins' money was tied up in luxuries that quickly felt like basic necessities. Scott dropped $6,000 up front for a boat club membership to cruise the bay, and Taylor insisted on a leased BMW 3 Series Gran Turismo, adding another $400 payment to their towering stack of bills. When they finally sat down to review their expenses, the bleed was everywhere. They were spending $10,000 a month. Over $2,000 went to food, including expensive dinners out and daily coffee runs. Another $450 vanished into entertainment. Every time they earned a bit more, they immediately found a way to spend it on something nicer, faster, or newer. Like a lot of high earners, they rationalized these specific purchases as rewards. Because they were exhausted and spending almost all their waking hours away from their child, the fancy cars and the pricey sushi dates felt like mandatory compensation. They told themselves that if they were going to work this hard, they needed something tangible to show for it. This pattern is known as lifestyle creep. As income rises, expenses inflate to consume the difference. Instead of using a salary bump to buy long-term freedom, professionals continually elevate their baseline standard of living, effectively locking themselves into decades of mandatory labor just to maintain the status quo. Escape from this cycle requires a mathematical alternative to working until age 65. That alternative is the core engine of the FIRE movement: financial independence, retire early. This equation shows exactly how the FIRE target is calculated. To reach financial independence, you determine your annual expenses and multiply that number by 25. That final sum is your target FI number. Once your investments hit that amount, you technically never have to work for a paycheck again. The 25x multiplier works because of a concept called the 4% rule. By investing that massive nest egg into low-cost index funds, which historically return an average of over 5% after inflation, you can safely withdraw 4% of your total portfolio every year to cover your living expenses. Because the market growth outpaces your withdrawals, the money sustains itself indefinitely. Applying this to Scott and Taylor's $120,000 a year lifestyle, they would need $3 million to retire. But if they cut their spending in half to $60,000 a year, the target number drops to $1.5 million. By aggressively banking the difference, they could hit that goal in exactly 11 years. The math is bulletproof, but the human reaction rarely is. When faced with cutting expenses by 50%, Taylor immediately balked at giving up her BMW. The prospect of extreme frugality felt entirely like deprivation, triggering a defensive refusal to lose the status symbols she had worked so hard to acquire. Equations cannot solve emotional attachments. If you try to force aggressive savings tactics without first addressing why a person values their luxury items, the entire plan will collapse. The psychology of spending has to be dismantled before the math can actually take over. Scott introduced the 10 things exercise to identify what actually generated joy in Taylor's daily life, bypassing the usual defensiveness that accompanies financial debates. When they compared lists, the results were identical. Their favorite activities included hearing their baby laugh, going for walks, sharing a cup of coffee, and reading books. Aside from an occasional glass of wine and good chocolate, Their peak experiences required zero capital. Look at this scale. When you weigh those simple joys against their bloated $10,000 a month expense sheet, the disconnect is glaring. The things actually driving their happiness were completely disconnected from where they were bleeding their cash. Faced with the hard evidence of their own preferences, the teardown began. Scott permanently canceled his $6,000 boat club membership, and after realizing the BMW lease was adding a year and a half of mandatory labor to her retirement timeline, Taylor handed over the keys and watched a stranger drive her car out of their driveway. Frugality is widely misunderstood as punishment. In practice, it is a tool for optimizing joy. By stripping away the purchases that offer low emotional return, you free up massive amounts of capital to secure the things you actually value. With the cars and subscriptions gone, they took aim at the ultimate expense, their zip code. They approached their landlord, negotiated a break in their expensive Coronado house lease, and made the decision to completely uproot their California lives. Instead of signing a new lease, they hit the road. They leveraged remote work, stayed with family, and traveled the country to hunt for a more affordable city. By doing this, they effectively neutralized the big three expenses that anchor most budgets: housing, transportation, and food. By running the projections on this new nomadic setup, the financial shift was immense. With Taylor working remotely and Scott picking up freelance gigs, they were on track to save $50,000 in a single year, more than they had managed to save in any 5-year period of their entire lives. Decoupling your location from your income exploits the gap between a high salary and a low-cost environment, significantly shortening the timeline to early retirement. Mainstream critics often paint FIRE as a grim life of extreme deprivation. In practice, the movement centers on intentionality, choosing to direct capital only toward the things that offer a high return on happiness. The lifestyle audit boils down to one highly specific question. When you look at a purchase, are the hours of mandatory labor required to afford it actually worth the price? Money is simply a proxy for life energy. Every time you buy a blender, a luxury car, or a massive mortgage, you are trading a non-renewable unit of your own time. You are giving up days, weeks, or years of your life to pay for that object. Financial freedom is the result of intentionally opting out of the consumer cycle. By stopping the flow of money into status symbols, the Ricans secured the capital needed